these words, then you know you're underway and welcome. It is exactly 12 noon on the East Coast, 9 a.m. on the West. I'm Mike Blinder in Nashville, Tennessee, so I'm kind of hovering in on Central Time. And I am the publisher of E&P Magazine. Those of you that don't know us, Wikipedia calls us the Bible of the newspaper industry because this brand started in 1884. But we're a lot more than that now. We serve those that publish journalism, news content in all different forms, all different flavors, all different stripes. And our mission is to support that mission of we have like 3 bullets when we look at our mission at E&P, and that is to serve the person who has to create news, serve that person who creates the news's need to find an audience for it, and then serve that person who creates the news that has to find an audience in a way to monetize it. Those are the 3 most important things we look at as we publish content, as we put out our brand, as we build our audience. And don't want to oversell the webinar you're about to attend, but when I was first approached by BlueLena to do this broadcast, I was approached by the team saying that we're aggregating content from the hundreds and hundreds of sites that we serve, the databases we build, the publishers we work for. But it wasn't until yesterday that I got the prep and got to see the data we're releasing today. And I don't want to oversell this, but I think some of this is going to be mind-blowing. Daniel, I know they say in sales, under promise, over deliver. So if I'm setting you up for a big bar here, I apologize. But I think there's some really good nuggets that are going to come out during this broadcast. Do you agree, sir?
I sure hope so, and appreciate the opportunity, Mike. Looking forward to this.
This is Daniel Williams. Not only, and full disclosure, Daniel Williams is a supporter of E&P Magazine as a marketing partner. But full disclosure, we're a customer of the company that he founded, BlueLena. Now, Daniel, this goes way back because remember, I started in digital back in the late 90s. And the man that got me into this was one of the founders of the original company called Leap Media. His name was James Gold, and I think there should be statues erected for James because we were doing stuff way back when, before anyone knew what the internet was. Can you kind of give me the overview? What is BlueLena? How did you start? What is your history, sir? I don't want to, go through your entire resume, but please just give us an overview of what this whole thing is about, if you don't mind.
Sure, happy to. And the story of BlueLena really requires me to kind of go back about 15 years ago. I've been in publishing for 25 years, started with USA Today in operations, was there for 3 years, and then went to the News and Observer in Raleigh, North Carolina, here where I live now, was there for 4 years, then went to Gannett. And then it was at the New York Times company that I joined in 2006, was hired by James. And at that time, the New York Times company owned a group of 15 daily newspapers, primarily in the southern part of the U.S., but it was part of the New York Times portfolio and was called the Regional Media Group. And what I was hired to do there, and what we ended up spending the next 4 years, was building really the first shared resource management model for publishing. And that involved the centralization of everything from content management systems to ad tech, such as it was back then. And then the group that I was part of was audience development. And so what we did was we invested in building an audience data warehouse. And then we managed all of the subscription acquisition, retention, lifecycle marketing activities on behalf of the publications that we owned. And so that became a model that the Times ended up selling the division. I was recruited to go work for a company in Connecticut called The Day. And it was there that we launched the first membership model for media, which I can talk a little bit about later. But we started to get approached by publishers who said, we really like what you guys are doing. We'd love to be able to do this for ourselves, but we don't have the tools, technology, or expertise to do it well. Is this something you'd be willing to do for us as a service? So that led me and James Gold, who you mentioned, and another colleague of mine, Tom Ratkovich, to start a company called Leap Media Solutions. And it was really built upon what we had developed at the New York Times, which was a shared resource management model where we made the investments in technology and the talent and the resourcing to operate it on behalf of media companies. And so Leap started out in 2012, really built to serve small independent daily publishing companies. And over the next 6 years, we actually grew to work with about 600 daily newspaper companies across the country. And it was no longer just the small publishers and the independent publishers. We still worked with almost all of them. But then we were working with Hearst and McClatchy and Gannett and Gatehouse and
Right.
Tribune. So and even some of the larger independents like the Star Tribune and the Dallas Morning News. So what happened? So then after growing Leap, we were approached and acquired by our technology company. I stayed on for a couple of years through an earnout, and then I really wanted to get back to solving business model challenges for publishing. And James had moved on, and he owned an alt weekly in Colorado, and there was a lot of discussion among the alt weeklies about revenue diversification because they had been entirely relying on events and display advertising to fund their journalism. And so when we started BlueLena, we thought, we could help some of these publishers with their, tooling and site configuration, and helping, explore reader revenue as a third leg of the stool, if you will. And then when the pandemic hit, these publishers started contacting us and saying, "We don't know if we're going to be in business next week. Can you help us out?" So in a weird sort of way, the pandemic served as a catalyst event that launched BlueLena, and we went from literally working with one publisher in middle of March 2020 to about 20 publishers at the end of May, and then fast forward to today, we're now working with about 300 media organizations across the U.S. And it's a diverse collection, which I'll talk about a little bit more. So I see you've brought up this slide, sort of already shared my own career journey and what led us to start BlueLena. And so for the past 5.5 years, we've been really focused on helping to empower independent publishers to build sustainable reader revenue. And the way that we do that, and again, this goes back to our origins at the New York Times, and then what we did at Leap was to provide the technology and the talent and expertise to operate it. So we provide not just technology, but professional services. And these are the 5 ways that we really support and serve and help media companies. The first, which there's a lot of discussion across the industry right now, and I'm happy to see that we've finally come around to this point. But there's a lot of discussion about the strategic imperative to build direct relationships with your readers and your audiences. So the first thing that we do is to activate and grow audiences, and that typically involves, getting people to sign up for newsletters, or in some cases, there's a registration requirement to view beyond a certain number of articles. And then once we're successful in converting an anonymous site visitor to a registered reader relationship, then we go about the process of building that relationship and engaging with those readers, and sharing about our publisher's mission and what they do, and then ultimately in doing that, we're trying to achieve a third outcome, which is to get as many of these readers and followers to become financial supporters. So whether you operate an open access site or a metered access site or something in between, we support all of those models, and there's no one size fits all that's right. We work with publishers to kind of tailor their strategy, and then the fourth area is through as we're collecting we're building relationships with readers. We're getting to get a better understanding of how they're interacting with the brand. That helps publishers to deepen their knowledge and understanding of what it is that their audiences are in need of, and what they're looking for, and what has led them to become newsletter subscribers or donors or subscribers. And so we're helping publishers deepen their understanding of their audiences there. And then finally, an area that we've been focused on over the past year or so is because about half of our publishing community are nonprofit newsrooms. We're working with them. We've built a CRM and a moves management system that helps them to unlock major donor opportunities from people who are in their database. So Yeah, that's really the five ways that BlueLena is impacting journalism today.
But I'm not a nonprofit newsroom and I
Yep.
don't charge for access. But
Yep.
I think I use you mostly because you're experts at me maximizing my first party data.
Right.
I mean, I mean, before I contracted with you, I was doing it through spreadsheets and I didn't know what I was doing. You guys found me the right tools. In other words, you gave me like a buffet. Can I use that term?
Sure.
I didn't use all your tools. I pulled out the ones I needed and then you got the expertise behind it. And you helped me move a database from 5,000 to 32,000 today.
Yeah.
I mean, and that database, I'm going to blow some smoke your way. You're the marketing partner, is everything to me. That's how I built the audience for this webinar, over 220 registrants. That's how I launch new verticals. That's how
Mhm.
I engage my audience in order to make sure that they're reading our content and also responding to that content. That database is gold. And I
Yeah.
couldn't have done it without your expertise. I want to get into, because we're about to get into the data now, because this is what this, you tuned in, you heard the story about Daniel and this amazing companies. But there's someone who I got to say is twice as smart as me is in the chat room. Her name is Ashley Woods. She's already greeted you in chat. And I want to just do a quick housekeeping, if I may, Daniel. We're in
Sure.
Zoom, duh. Everybody goes to Zoom, but there's a problem in Zoom, in my humble opinion. Zoom gives you a chat, which I want us to be in now. I want people to respond in there, ask questions in there, argue with us in there. But Zoom defaults the chat to just the panelists. I want you to pull that puppy down and make it to all. I'd like you to just ask your questions, challenge the numbers you're about to see as we flip that letter now and turn the corner, and 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 start a dialogue in there. And Ashley, who is my genius whenever I have questions about my CRM, because I do my customer relationship management through you and I do my first party data through you. And wow, it's all one. I use one tool for every single contact I have. It's just a brilliant company. But Ashley's the one that is in there and she's going to be answering your questions and point you in the right direction. So, with your permission, Daniel, can I go to the first slide now? I'm going to drive.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm going off your cues, Mike.
All right, so let's get started.
Thank you.
These are the real numbers now that I want to first focus on and dissect. Okay, and
Yep.
it's fascinating, and I'm going to tee it up now because those of you that are a fan of ENP know I host the vodcast series called ENP Reports. I broke a precedent. I had the same guest on twice in a month, and that was Tim Franklin and Mitt Dill because he first issued a groundbreaking report of doing an entire regional study. And the big takeaway from that is no one's paying for news. It was like only 15% of the thousands and thousands of people they surveyed are willing to pay 15% of a market for news. Then he released the big 2025 study, which, Daniel, it was all hair on fire. Everybody went nuts. It showed a decline in digital traffic. It
Mhm.
showed, and even though Tim softened it on the show, and I'll put links into the story that we put up after this, and I'll make sure people can access it. But it was really bad news about the future of our ability to get people to see our content digitally. This data is much more promising. So before you break down the numbers for me, Daniel, these are aggregate numbers across all of your all the data you track. Can you explain where this came from, please, if you don't mind?
Yeah, yeah. So, and we'll get into this in some of the subsequent slides where we sort of break out how we track across different segments of the BlueLena community. So, going back to the earlier slide when I mentioned we worked with about 300, independent media organizations across the U.S. It is a diverse collection of for-profit, nonprofit, legacy print dailies, pure play digital. We have lifestyle brands, alt weeklies. It's a very, as I said, diverse collection. And so there's a couple of top line metrics that we like, regardless of model, tax status, any of that, that we want to measure ourselves on and also be able to benchmark. And so those are the things that we feel like we can directly impact through our tools and support services and whatnot. And the first is to grow your known addressable audience, and email list growth being a proxy for that. So We can see that across the board, we've seen 58% growth in email lists year over year. So we're looking at 9 months of data year to date, or January.
How important is that? Because I already know the answer. I mean, this is
Well,
huge to me because this means people are signing up to be alerted of our content across
yeah.
all different shapes and stripes of news and content publishers, correct?
Yeah, it's critical. I mean, again, we could probably devote an entire conversation to this, and they're much smarter people than me who can get at kind of the root cause of it. But everyone is probably seeing the significant decline in referral traffic from
Of
social
course.
media, algorithmic driven and otherwise. And so, what we and this actually predates those trends over the last 6, 8 months. But we've just been really focused on providing the most efficient, effective way to convert anonymous site visitors to your site to known registered reader relationships. Because once we're able to do that, we then have we know it's no longer a cookie, a unit, but it's actually a person associated to an email address, and they have interest and characteristics that we know about, and in the kind of newsletters that they're signing up for, and so forth. So growing the email list is something that we really concentrate a lot of effort on.
And
And then
this
yeah,
is no way of saying that we don't want to continue our battles against big tech to find a way to get those page views or at least some
right,
compensation that
yeah,
AI is pulling. I mean, my content's all over AI. And
yeah,
I have amazing Google authority, and now Google uses AI to just, rake my content. But when I have that email list, I sleep better at night. I don't, I mean, yes, I want that credit that I'm losing, but I'm gaining through this. So, and this proves, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth,
yeah,
this proves the audience wants to sign up for our content. And if you're not focusing on that, you're making a mistake. Can I just put
yeah.
that out there, sir?
Sure. I'm not going to argue with Mike on an opinion.
Yeah, that was an
I've
opinion.
learned that. No, and I see a comment, and there's a question: is that 58% same store? Yes, this is for those publishers who have been with us for at least a year, where we have a year of full history to compare to prior years. So it's truly 58% year over year growth on a same store basis. And then uh, just to move quickly through this slide, reader payments, meaning the gross number of one-time and recurring contributions, regardless of model, are up 13%. Reader revenues are tracking the same percentage growth, almost 14%. Average revenue per payment is up slightly. We actually have seen that number go higher in the past quarter as we have more people now adopting our CRM and moves management system, where they're not leaving money on the table. So let's say that you have someone in your audience that otherwise you would be marketing and engaging to become a $25 a month, rank and file recurring donor. If our model suggests that this person has the means and willingness to contribute at a higher level, then we can actually identify, intervene, and then engage with that reader in a different way, so that we're not marketing a $25 a month contribution when there may be a $5,000 gift opportunity available.
You keep
Uh,
using the term gift and contribution, but this
yeah,
also applies to subscriber revenue as well.
it
People
does. It
willing to
does. Yep.
pay or
Yep.
guilt, and I call sometimes the money that is contributed guilt revenue. If you are asking for people to support your journalism,
Yeah.
regardless if you're for profit or nonprofit, correct, sir?
Right. And actually, yeah. So because we're presenting this as a across the board, like total BlueLena community, this particular slide, and I think when we get into later, you'll see a breakout of like print versus digital, or metered access versus open access. So why don't we transition to the next slide, and then I can go a little bit further into that. So just real quickly, some trends you can transition through this. Some trends to pay attention to. Again, we know that direct audience growth is accelerating, email lists are expanding, and revenue, based on the slide that I just shared, is, I wouldn't even say holding strong. It's continuing to grow, and we'll show a little bit more evidence of that. And then the last thing is, this is a little bit self-serving. I'm not here to promote tout BlueLena. I think you've done that enough, Mike. I appreciate it. But we are very encouraged in seeing that for every dollar that a publisher invests in audience development strategy and reader revenue growth with BlueLena, so a combination of tools, support services, strategy consulting, and what have you. For every dollar invested, they're generating $14.80 in return. And we have some publishers that are, 35, 40x. So, that is really sort of core to our mission. What we set out to do and sort of aligns with the shared resource management model is by BlueLena making the investments in the technology and the talent to operate it, we can then leverage, a staff of 18 across 250 news organizations and provide the technology and support and the hands-on, resourcing at a fraction of the cost versus if one of these smaller newsrooms were to go out and do it themselves. And the fact that they're, not just seeing that benefit, but also that they're getting, nearly $15 in return for every dollar invested is an affirmation that the model is working.
And you want these publishers to own this audience, but
Yeah,
what tech or strategy decisions most often make or break garnering that audience, owning
yeah.
these people?
So we've made a decision. We've completely standardized on a technology, a company called Active Campaign that we've partnered with. We've taken that technology off the shelf. We've customized it for journalism and we've white labeled it as BlueLena. But the core technology is Active Campaign. It's really no different than like Newspack that is built on WordPress or IndieGraph or some of those other firms. But Newspack is a pretty good example because they've taken WordPress off the shelf and they've developed a platform specifically for journalism organizations. And BlueLena has done the same thing with our audience management stack. Where we are much more flexible is in we can support basically any content management system. So if you're on Town News, if you're on WordPress, if you're on Newspack, if you're on Naviga, we have publishers on all of those. And so what we do is we install our tools and technology and integrate with their sites and then provide a way for us to, or not us, but the publishers to collect, reader information through registration, donation, subscription, and then that ultimately feeds into the BlueLena environment where we can then activate it.
I
Um,
even I handle my print subscription through a company called SimpleCirc. And the
yep,
moment
yep,
someone goes into SimpleCirc, we just like it because it's simple,
yep,
and the moment they go in there, it automatically pushes that data into my Active/BlueLena platform, and now I have that data and I can see every move that person makes if I can in our digital sphere. Let's move on though, because I don't want
sure.
to belabor. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's
So
talk about this whole idea of do I need paywalls or I don't need paywalls? And what are paywalls? I mean, we've had a lot of dialogue about this, a lot of reporting on this. People, should we meter a site? Should we keep it wide open? What are you seeing and what is the trending around the whole idea of access to content now, Daniel?
sure, and I should caveat, and so let me just explain what we're looking at. This is comparing the performance of sites that maintain open access, meaning there's no meter, there's no paywall, the content is freely available to anyone without, a requirement to pay. Whereas metered access means that there is a requirement to pay. It could be a hard paywall, very few examples of that, or a metered access model where you might be entitled to read 3, 5, 10 articles before you're required to pay. And so in the parentheses, it shows the number of sites that we are actually clients in this analysis. And the metered access number is actually closer to 35. I'm not sure why it says 15. So the majority of the sites that we work with are open access, but we do have a fair number of metered access sites. That number's around 35. But the thing is, and I think one of the things that we've been able to demonstrate is it is possible for a media company to build and create a meaningful stream of reader support for your journalism without deploying a metered access model or a paywall. It can be done. The numbers may not be as significant, but you can, especially for, mission aligned or mission, driven organizations that, they exist to make sure that their content and their reporting and their journalism is available to anyone, regardless of their ability to pay. That's really important. And so, but for those open access site, we can see that there year over year, 18% growth for open access. But even the metered access sites, which included in that are a lot of legacy publications, we're seeing about a 9% growth in reader revenue year over year. And then through the first 9 months of the year, that totals up to about $22 million of direct support for journalism, which, regardless of model, is about a 14% growth. So to summarize, we are seeing reader support for journalism continue to grow, regardless of the model that publishers happen to deploy. And
Period.
we can, yeah,
Even in a tough economy. And in a bit, you're going to see some data that was mind blowing to me about how readers understand our mission. Can I just tease that? That's coming up near the end.
yeah,
That they, even though we do a lousy job promoting who we are and what we do for a community, that's one man's opinion, but I'll back it up. The
yeah,
readers understand and they're comfortable. But this kind of disputes a lot of the doom and gloom to me. This means if you do it right and you manage your data right and you work with your readers right, you can still see audience growth. There is no downturn here. Correct, Daniel?
right,
This is growth. All
yeah.
right, let's move on if you don't mind. Okay, am I on the same slide or did I move you forward?
Yeah, I mentioned this earlier, maybe in that slide we were just on, but to be clear, there is a significant difference in the total amount of revenue that we see when looking at metered access sites versus open access sites. On the far right, where you see ARR per site, that means annual reader revenue per site. And so for those open access sites, which tend to be a little smaller, or maybe within that universe, these are newer publications that are not quite as mature. Some of them, recently launched in the past year or two. Others have been around for less than a decade. So they're still very much in the process of building a brand, building an audience. So it's unsurprising that you see, I mean, $120,000 of annual reader revenue support for these sites that are typically, quite small, less than 50,000, monthly unique visitors and so forth, is still enough to fund, two reporter positions or what have you. Whereas metered access sites, on the other hand, typically more mature, established, legacy, you're seeing, about a 5x increase on average in terms of the number or the amount of reader revenue that they generate. And it stands to read. I mean, if you think about, a metered access site, if you find value in the content that they're publishing, and you want to support that and you want to read it, then you have to pay. So 600,000 versus 120,000 works out to be almost exactly 5x.
All right, so let's do the key takeaways.
Okay.
And what are we learning from all of this now?
Yeah. You can go transition on. Yeah. So open access sites. So we see that the rate of growth, both in audience and the number of gifts, as well as the average amount per gift, is growing at a higher rate than metered access sites. Whereas metered access sites generate, I think that should be 5x more revenue and deliver a 33 for every dollar invested in technology, they're generating $33 in return. So essentially, you're trading maybe a slower growth for stronger long-term sustainability and financial performance when considering a metered access model. Whereas for an open access donation or membership model, you're going to see a lower rate of conversion but a higher average rate of giving.
So this is the balance between reach and revenue, which publishers have to give a hard think to. Do you agree?
Yeah, and I mean there are other factors. I mentioned mission earlier. I mean a lot of the publishers, particularly the nonprofit publishers, it is part of their their whole, reason for existence is to ensure that, people who don't have the financial means, or you're, maybe focused on an underserved community, you want to make sure that people have access to the news and information to make good decisions in their lives and understand what's going on in their communities. And so a paywall or a metered access creates a barrier to that. So it's as much a mission question as it is an economic decision or
And
financial
for
decision.
people who are smarter than us to figure out. Again, housekeeping, we're halfway through our journey. Ashley is answering questions in the chat room. Please ask if something is up here you don't understand, or something you don't agree with. Just make, go into chat and give your piece to everyone. We'll do our best to answer your questions. So let's move on. What are we looking at here now in performance metrics? And you're looking at this
Yep.
based on associations represented across your spectrum of different publishers, correct?
Yep. So again, as I noted earlier, we have a very diverse collection of journalism organizations that we work with. And so for those that on the call that may not be familiar, Lion Publishers, Lion is an acronym for Local Independent Online News. Institute for Nonprofit News is, as the name suggests, a collection of nonprofit news organizations that meet certain eligibility criteria. Local Media Association is the largest trade association in the U.S. that serves print and broadcast and other media organizations. The Association of Alt Weeklies, these are alternative news weeklies. Many of them still maintain healthy print products. Some of them are pure play digital. And then the Rural News Network, which is actually part of INN. What's interesting here, and the reason that I've included it, is that we're seeing consistent, strong performance across email list growth. Again, a proxy for known conversion of known audiences. And then you can go to the next slide. I think I've got financial information for these folks. Yeah, so
This is the dollars right
yeah,
here.
and this is in terms of revenue. So leading the way is the Institute for Nonprofit News, where we work with 51 of those news outlets. We've seen 20% year-over-year growth in reader contributions for their work. And with the possible exception of less than a handful of INN members, they're all open access sites. Lion is a sort of a collection of, they're independently owned. Some of them are nonprofit, some of them are for-profit. But we're also seeing 11% year-over-year growth for reader revenue. Local Media Association and the alt weeklies are just under 10%, but still growing. And then the Rural News Network, which is a nascent organization of rural outlets, we're seeing nearly 20% growth for those publishers that we work with.
I got to do a little housekeeping here.
Yeah.
Ashley, make sure you're responding to everyone when someone asks you a question, because Ron asked a good question in chat, and I want to make sure he gets your answer in the list of all of your publishers. Let me get this is bothering me.
Okay.
What is nonprofit doing that for profit could take a leaf from their book on? I mean, you're one of the things I love about your company is you just don't
Yeah.
consult me on technology, you consult me on messaging.
Yeah.
I mean, you actually give me verbiage that you've tested or used, or maybe what are they doing that anyone can do in order to get readers to maybe help us support our newsrooms? What are you learning from this?
Yeah, and I'm really probably answering this on behalf of other members of our team who could provide a much more detailed response, but I'll take a swing at it because mine's probably a little bit more philosophical. Yeah, I think the INN and even the Lion members, their business models are largely predicated on direct reader support, whereas the legacy print are still sort of moving through a transition. It's a business model transition away from, 15, 20 years ago, 80% of revenue was advertising and 20% was from readers, meaning from subscriptions and single copy purchases and things like that. for these newer, pure play digital outlets that some of them, have just been launched in the last half decade or so, they went into it saying, we want to be able to we want to be able to create and provide journalism that's primarily funded by direct reader support, along with philanthropy and gifts and sponsorships and things like that. So I guess what I would say is they've really made it a priority. They've made audience development and engaging with audiences and having a deep understanding of their needs and interests and the way that they can support them. That is ingrained in their organizations, and it's something that they think about all the time. And so I would say that that's the reason why we see Lion and INN members and Rural News Network, for that matter, really stand apart when we look at both the amount of revenue that they're generating as well as the consistent year-over-year growth.
All right. So let's move on.
Okay.
Let's look at the
Yeah.
gross earned revenues, if you don't
Yep.
mind, sir.
And then we also, again, we most of our publisher, I mean, I'd say honestly, like everybody that we work with, depending upon the definition of small, I would consider to be small, meaning like less than 1 million monthly unique visitors. We do have a few that are over that. But what's interesting and completely unsurprising is that there is a direct correlation between the size of your audience and the gross amount of earned reader revenues, I should say. And so I should also point out, like, this does not include major gifts. This is just rank and file reader contributions, most of them recurring. So it doesn't include, like, a foundation that writes a $100,000 check and so forth. These are from individuals. But yeah, so we see, like, for like the sites in sort of that 50 to 100,000 range, somewhere between $20 to $50,000 of annual reader revenue that they're able to generate. It's
Draw.
never going to fund, well, I shouldn't say never, but currently it's not funding an entire news operation by any means, but they're building, a steady stream of reliable revenue that they can plan their business around, and then as they continue to grow, both audience and support.
But I'm also seeing the fact that the smaller sites are having the most growth.
Yeah.
And that just makes me feel good. That, I mean, something tells me that maybe when we looked at the Medill study, again, one man's opinion, and they said the top 100 sites were losing page views. And I think a myriad of reasons, again, could be big tech,
Yeah.
it could be AI and what have you. But those top 100 are also, big companies that, lock
Yeah.
down and all that. You're seeing that if someone, I mean, one of the questions we're going to address that one of our audience, when someone registers said, I'm thinking of buying a newspaper. What do you think?
Mhm.
The smaller guys are doing okay. They're growing their audiences. Do you agree? And that's just, to me, just darn good news. Or am I being too Pollyanna?
They're definitely seeing, early growth. Most of these are, newer, but there's some ways to go. And I'll kind of go off script for a second. I actually earlier this week, a couple members of my team and we met here in Raleigh with Newspack. We have a business partnership with Newspack, and one of the things that we were sort of, looking at, and I guess I have the benefit of 2 decades of experience. Like, when I first started in my career, that was the beginning of this move toward consolidation in the daily world. And then uh, through that consolidation and staff force reductions and layoffs and this, that, and the other, a lot of journalists, the other thing that happened sort of coincided with that period is the barriers to entry to launch a publication are almost non-existent. I mean, anyone can launch a site on WordPress or Substack or whatever. So a lot of journalists who were displaced or maybe a casualty of layoffs at a larger media chain went off and started their own thing. And then again, using tools and services like BlueLena, News Revenue Hub, and others like that, they're able to start building a meaningful stream of revenue to support what they're doing. But I do think the pendulum always swings back in the direction of consolidation. And I think you're starting to see that happen even in the nonprofit space, where for various reasons, could be operational efficiencies like pooling resources, back office functions and so forth, standardizing on technology and things like that. You're going to see more. I think if I were to make a prediction, you'll see a swing back in the direction of more. It's not going to be consolidation in the traditional sense of like own and operate, but I think these outlets will find a way to maintain autonomy and editorial independence while sharing back office functions. And I think that's necessary for their long-term
Out,
survival.
uh, you are preaching to the choir. Outsource, outsource, outsource.
Yep.
And there are now companies providing those services.
Yeah.
I don't want to give them. This is your webinar, so we'll leave it there.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just do the final. Let's close out network insights. You pretty much covered most of this, but these are your three major takeaways when we look at the networks, correct?
Yeah, and we probably touched on some of these points already. Obviously, INN publishers lead the way. LMA mainly as a function of the um, characterization of their membership, or a lot of legacy companies and so forth that have more mature subscription models, so they're a little further along in their journey. They post the highest ROI and revenue per publisher. And there's for different networks, we see different strengths. Line and ANN members are seeing huge email list growth, whereas rural networks saw the largest gain in recurring reader revenue. So happy to go into more detail if anybody wants to connect offline and, engage a conversation as to what's driving that.
This is my
Um,
favorite. This is where we get into my favorite topic now.
yeah.
Define what you mean by readers to sustainers, if you don't mind, sir.
So transition, because I'm not sure what's going to reveal here. Okay, yeah. So there is let me just sort of set the stage. When we are successful in converting an anonymous site visitor to a registered reader relationship, for all of the publishers that we work with, one of the core deliverables is to design and engineer and create a reader onboarding journey. And so when someone signs up for a newsletter or registers for site access or becomes a donor, they immediately go into an onboarding series. And these are typically built out over the first 90 days. And the purpose of that is to build a brand relationship and promote mission and so forth, and create habit and loyalty and what have you. But in those journeys, we also include a standard audience survey. And I see my friend Ariel Zarulnik is on the phone here or on the call. And actually, a lot of the standard questions that we've incorporated into that survey were part of just this brilliant project that she led a couple of years ago called the Membership Puzzle. The Membership Puzzle Project. And so we've taken those recommendations, we've adopted them, we've incorporated into our reader surveys. And so among the questions that we ask is to try to get to the sort of understand what are the primary motivators of people's willingness to support news organization. And what we find is that in every case, whether you are a for-profit, a nonprofit, a metered access, an open access, a legacy publication, a new publication, in every case, the number one response and the number one driver behind someone's willingness to support a news organization is the belief that it should exist in the world. It's
Could you
not
say
swag.
that louder? That is
Yep.
that is huge. They
Yep.
get it. In other words, the
Yep.
audience understands the mission. It's not just you're a business. You're my voice in my community. They get it.
It's the connection that they feel. It is the sense of belonging. It is the alignment, between what they're getting in exchange for, what they're providing and why they why they continue to return to the site, whether it's for news, whether it's for information, whether it's to know what's going on in their children's school system, what new restaurants have opened in town, what's happening at the Performing Arts Center. It's any and all of that. It's the belief that that should exist in the world, and that is why people support news organizations financially.
Whether they're
Um,
nonprofit or for profit, there is
Regardless of
opportunity.
tax status. And I don't know if you included that graph that I sent you earlier this morning. It might
Yes,
be on
yes,
the
yes.
next
Here
slide.
it
I
comes.
can actually probably talk through that. There you go. And I
Yeah.
know these at the bottom, we'll get a copy of this for you guys, but
Well,
at
I
the,
should mention this. We're going to let these slides be available to those who register. Is that okay with you, sir?
sure,
Sure.
absolutely. So
All
you
right.
can see along the bottom, those are basically, when we ask that question, what are the primary, reasons? And it's a multi, like they can select multiple options in terms of what, motivates them to support news organizations. Um, and so you can see the options along the bottom, and then along that continuum, the least important factor, and this is important, everyone pay attention. The least important factor is merchandising and swag and tote bags. It's stunning actually how inconsequential that is. Whereas as you
And
move
we'll send
across,
you the CDs and the mug. You know,
yeah. Hey, listen, I years and years ago when I was at the N&O, that was it. That was what we did.
yeah.
But uh,
All those
but
E and
it
P tote bags that I have in storage. But go ahead. No, I get it.
so and I'll just conclude by saying, by asking these questions of our audiences and collecting this information, not only is it helpful for us to understand, what it is that motivates and drives people to support that news organization, but we also lean into this in our messaging. And right now we're in the fourth quarter. This is a huge, tremendously important, and it's a huge, you know, big time of year in terms of end of year campaigning and fundraising for journalism. And so we incorporate this information into the messaging. And I should also, put a plug in for Press Forward about 2 weeks ago, published a really sort of authoritative guide in terms of how news organizations should be um, in messaging and engaging with their audiences and promoting the importance of the work that they do and why people should support it. So we'll make sure to get a link to that report when we send everything out.
This is amazing. So let's bring it home. How are audiences finding
Yep.
news and information? I'll reveal your bullets if you. Okay, let me go back. There's what you.
Yeah.
That's what you. So go ahead. Bring it home.
Yeah. I mean, just to kind of go through this quickly. I think there's the thing that I would say, sort of anticipate the question, like, how do you reach audiences? Because there's this really diffuse world that we're in now where, some people are getting their information on TikTok or social or, direct to site, which, newsletters are big. I think it's important to be omnipresent. And I think there's a lot more that we can be doing to leverage. There's projects underway to involve creators in that work, to be you know, especially going where younger audiences are building their own communities. That we need to be everywhere, and really, in my opinion, there needs to be much more focus on building audiences of the future, um, and that is a challenge, but it's something that we have to confront. Social media as a source of local news is waning. And beyond Facebook, usage dropped sharply, and even Facebook itself is on the
So
downward.
all this fear of social media being the fake news of the future, people have already realized that's not where I should be getting my content. At least you're
Yeah,
seeing in your survey, correct?
yeah. Now, and then this last bullet point, I'm a little bit skeptical because I think it's if it's true that 70% of this isn't our data, this is from industry research, that 70% of surveyed Americans say that they currently support at least one news organization, which now, if that were the case, I think we'd be in a far different state. But uh, I guess there is some encouragement, is that whether they actually are or aren't, supporting, they at least have some interest in supporting at least one news organization. So, yeah, not to be negative about it, but I think it actually indicates that there's opportunity, and so that connection with audiences and promoting your value and your mission and your services and why it's important to support, community news wherever you happen to be is something that we can all coalesce around.
Only have a few minutes left. Ashley's in the
Yeah.
chat room answering questions. Get them out now. Daniel and I will keep our eyes in the chat room as well. We did during the, oh, by the way, people are asking how do we get the slides. This is a housekeeping thing. When this webinar ends, we have an audio transcript. We transcribe it into an article. Everyone who registered for this will get a link to that article before end of day is usually our goal. And within that article will be the PDF of the slides. Relax, stop taking pictures of your screen. But we did during registration ask people to post some questions. Gerald here this is one of my favorite. This is your opinion now, Daniel. I have an opinion on this. People are looking, I mean, it was Warren Buffett, Daniel, who said, when people are fearful, be greedy. When people are greedy, be fearful. You and I both know there are a few entrepreneurs right now, and I could name them. There's, you got Carpenter Media, you got Cherry Road. There are entrepreneurs now picking up small newspapers in small communities because they see that the value is there. This is Gerald's asking. He's on this call. After seeing this data, what do you think? Daniel, I mean, he may come back and sue you, but what do you think? Is this a time in your humble opinion, if you were around a cocktail reception now, oh, you're in the news publishing industry, the local paper seems to be up for sale. I'm thinking of investing in it. What would you say?
I would say I will qualify by saying if your interest and motivation in acquiring a newspaper is to be part of building or rebuilding your community, um, ensuring that uh, the free press and information, which is enshrined in our Constitution, is something that you believe strongly in, then I would say yes. The business model challenge is something that requires continuous adaptation and experimentation and risk taking. So if you're going into it for the right reasons and you're capitalized in a way that you can experiment and do certain things and also know that what's working today may be completely disrupted and change tomorrow. It can be I I've been in it for 25 years, my entire professional career since I graduated from college. I sort of accidentally ended up in publishing. I was supposed to go to law school and took a year off, and then there we go. Um, but I have very much enjoyed it, and I think I wake up every day knowing that what it is that we do in our own small way is contributing to helping build better communities and all of that. So I don't know. I would say yes.
I would say yes too, because I'm a little bit
Yeah.
more Pollyanna, if I
Mhm.
may. I believe that this amazing experiment, Madisonian Republic, requires a local voice, a local free and unfettered press. And push
Yeah.
comes to shove, we're going through some crises now and some challenges. It will be there to serve a community. What it looks like, will it have a print product or a legacy transmitter? I don't think so. I think the print product can augment the different platforms you'll be using. But if, as Daniel said, if your mission is to serve and better your community, there's a profit there to do that.
Yeah.
Don't, you may not get wealthy. I mean, I don't think this is a billionaire's game, but it's
Right.
definitely, it's a rewarding mission. How should I put it? Just
Yeah.
Dylan here. I had a litany of questions, but I think in the middle, how to balance free content for community trust with paid. This is something we've been doing a lot of chatting on, and on my show as well as in our reporting. Again, your opinion, Daniel, may be more than, but you've gone through that data. If we are supposed to be serving a community. Should we not be wide open so our messaging is out there and doing its job and being seen?
Yeah.
But in order to be profit, I mean, where does that line between community trust and paid content? And how do you advise people when they ask you that question when they join your company?
I think any publisher, I mean, the tools and technologies today are flexible and allowing you to experiment with a lot of different ways to treat and categorize content. What I mean by that is, um, you know, you can designate certain things as like that are in the public interest or reporting that you want to be freely available to be made freely available, whereas other things are premium content. And so I think that's one area. You're really only limited by your imagination in terms of how you want to publish and then maintain, access and availability to that content. Um, One of the things that we're starting to see a lot more of, and we're doing a fair amount of experimentation with for open access publishers who up to this point have been very dogmatic in their view that we are never going to, have a paywall, we're never going to meter our site. But now it's, well, but we can have a registration requirement. So it doesn't mean that you're required to pay, but it does mean that you're required to identify yourselves, or whether that's, signing up using your email or a mobile phone. There are a number of different ways, and I think that's become pretty universally accepted, out in the marketplace. That if there's something that we're providing and there's a value to it, and we're asking you to provide something in exchange for that access, and that would be registering and revealing yourself or identifying yourself, so that we can establish a relationship. That to me makes complete sense, and it also serves to help us, kind of going back to the very beginning of the conversation, by establishing a direct relationship with our audiences, we can build a deeper understanding and hopefully move a number of those people along the path to becoming financial supporters. So,
Well, as a customer of your wonderful company, I want to say that I sleep better at night knowing there are people smarter than me that are helping me. And whenever I have a question, I mean, I get this like instant advice because I got worried that am I over promoting my list or monetizing it too much, and then the data was instantly shared with me. No, you're okay. You're not guessing the erosion. You're constantly keeping an eye on this most critical thing, which is our engagement with audience. Am I summing it up like trying to get to 50,000 feet? And Ashley's been a big help for me. She's been in the chat room answering your questions. There's her contact information on the screen. Ashley at
so
bluelena.io. Daniel, how else would you like to bring this home? You got a few more seconds.
I try to wrap it up this way. Uh, I don't think that the business model uh, of journalism is fundamentally different today than it was 100 years ago. And what I mean by that is we exist to be an infomediary that connects buyers and sellers in our local marketplace. Like that's the commercial side of it. And the way that we do that is through providing reporting and news and information and resources in a utilitarian way for the communities and audiences that we serve. And as long as we're doing that well, we will have, and there is an audience that finds value in what we are doing, and we have a relationship with those audiences, then we, meaning the publishers, are uniquely positioned. There's always going to be a merchant community, a business community that wants to be able to access and promote their own business and services to those audiences and those communities. So as long as we're providing something of value, there will be an audience, and there's an audience that finds value in that. There's a merchant community that will want to be able to also build relationships with those people in their communities, and we are uniquely positioned to do that.
There you go.
I don't think that's any different today than it was, decades ago. And so while technology disruptions, the whims of platforms, and all of those things are extremely, you know,
Challenging.
problematic,
Yeah.
challenging. What it is that we do, there's an opportunity there, and it's important. What we do is important, and so I think we're on the path to figuring all of that out.
Daniel Williams, founder, CEO, head honcho, you name it, of BlueLena. And of course, the amazing Ashley Woods, who is our face. We work with her all the time. There is her face in the chat room. Thank you so much for your support of VNP on a number of levels, not just as a marketing partner, but also as someone that helps us grow and do our job. And I want to thank our audience for participating. I hope you saw value in this. Watch your inbox. All the data and the write up about this is coming soon. And thanks for your attention. Everyone have a great day.
Thank you so much.